Hello, my good friends. You're welcome to part 6, and which is going to be the final part of our teaching, the series we've been on, Antidote to Chaos, a pathway to abundant life. And of course, this is going to be the final part, the final teaching we're going to be releasing, not just for this series, but for the year 2020, according to the Gregorian calendar, of course. And I think that let me begin with some good news. And first of all, thanking all of you who got to me with your feedback. Very important because a lot of what I'm going to be discussing in this final episode, which is also we said that this series Antidote to Chaos was building on the things we discussed in the blueprints to redemption. So consider that this final episode, like we're tidying things up, tying every loose end from the previous two teachings. And if you're still listening to this teaching and you haven't had a chance to listen to blueprints to redemption and transcendence, please do get that teaching and listen to it. There's a lot of very important things we discussed in that teaching, which we did build on them in this teaching. I want to thank all of you who got back to me with your feedback. Your feedback has really given me a compass to follow in this teaching. And I want to also thank those of you who shared with your friends, your loved ones, and those who felt and believed that you could get value out of this teaching. Because I want to tell you the download numbers that we've had for this teaching has surpassed by at least 20 points those we had for blueprints to redemption and transcendence. And I told you that the blueprints to redemption and transcendence, the downloads we had and the areas in which the teachings were downloaded and listened to, that I got feedback from all over the world, was the highest we've ever had, ever. And so this teaching blueprint, Antidote to Chaos, has surpassed that by at least 20 points. That is 20 downloads. And interestingly, in Blueprints to Redemption, this is what happened. The highest region from where we had downloads was Cameroon, followed by, significant downloads, followed Cameroon, followed by, I think, the United States, and then followed by, I think it was the Arab Emirates, then followed by Nigeria, or was it South Africa, or was it Zambia? One of those. Then the rest, like Ireland, UK, then other African countries, were kind of like the numbers were negligible, maybe two or three or four or five downloads from those different regions. Now it turns out that while all of those major regions that we had downloads from in the previous teaching experienced significant increase, like double, some of them even triple the numbers we had for the previous in the previous teaching series, Blueprints to Redemption. We've also had regions like, for example, in this teaching, the United States and the Arab Emirates are having the same numbers of downloads, and they are at the top of the charts, followed by, I think, is it one South Africa? Was it South Africa? Oh, yeah, and then Cameroon is around the fourth on the chart, and the numbers for Cameroon has increased significantly, almost doubled, even though it's gone below like fourth on the chart. So I want to thank all of you for sharing these teachings with your friends, your loved ones, those you believe will get value out of it. It's amazing. It's showing that we are adding values to the lives of so many people. And I get a thrill every time I get a feedback from someone and said, who tells me something you said, and they tell me the exact sentence or the exact quote or the exact idea that they learn that has untangled and things for them and is making a whole lot of difference in their lives. You cannot underestimate the change in perspective, what a change in perspective, what it is what it is, the benefit that can be derived from seeing your life through new lenses of reality. You cannot underestimate the value that we are offering in these teachings, and you cannot underestimate that when you share with your friends, or should I be saying overestimate? You cannot overestimate that when you begin to share with your friends the value that they get out of it. You cannot overestimate all of this. It's tremendous value. And I want to also thank those of you who got to me with words of gratitude, and those of you who even went as far as usual to contribute and to gift me material and financial things to support my work, to express your gratitude. I'm totally grateful to all of you. God bless you and reward you abundantly. Okay, so let's begin today with a story. because there are at least five things I want us to discuss, and I want to answer five questions. I'm going to answer the question I asked in one of the episodes, which is that sickness, is it caused by bacteria or by demons? I give you. Let me tell you the story I told you back in that episode. I told you that there was this missionary, a lady who had a heart for people, and she was a biologist. Her name was Josie. Yeah, Josie. I think that's how I pronounce that's her name. And she came to a West African country, and she was teaching a class of Africans. She was teaching them on medicine, and she gave them an overview of biology. And then with the second semester or something, she narrowed down to bacteriology and about bacteria and all those things and how they causes disease and so on. And so when she was done with the course, and she asked the students to recap for her what she had learned, what they had learned, and what they had understood for the course, and she wanted to know if the lesson had come across. And obviously, it seems the students had understood. And then one of the students put up their hand and told her that thank you for teaching us what the white man believes is the cause of diseases. Then he asked her that, now would you want to know what the real cause of diseases are? And she said she was curious, and she gave the guy the floor to go ahead and tell her what the real cause of disease is. Of course, if it's not bacteria and all the other things, viruses, which they've studied, then what it is. And this student told the lady that, look, what really causes disease is that you use demons, that witches or evil spirits, you sleep in the night, some come and they bite your back, and or in other words, evil spirits, simply put, and that is what causes diseases. And so they had this young these Africans, they had all these kind of rituals that they used to exorcise these spirits, or cure the poisonings of the spirits, and obviously in many cases that usually results to the person being sick getting well. And so if there are people who always say that evidence speaks the loudest. Someone says that there's a statement that a friend of mine always says, and right now it skips in my mind. I might have to pause for a bit to find that thought in my mind. However, the thought that evidence transcends knowledge or transcends reality, that experience transcends reality in the sense that, or transcends knowledge or objective scientific facts, in the sense that if I came to a doctor and I was sick, and the doctor told me that it was a bacteria, and the doctor used whatever medication he used to cure the bacteria, then of course, and I get well, and I've had an experience which seems to me to give credit to that knowledge substrate that the doctor I went to is deriving his practice from. Okay, now, but if I was sick and I went to another practitioner and he tells me that it's an evil spirit or a witch that beat me in the night while I was sleeping and that led to the cause of the sickness, and then he does some ritual to exorcise the poison of that witch or of that evil spirit, and then I get well. So doesn't that experience also seem to give credit to the substrate of information that this other practitioner is basing his practice on? In other words, does the end justify the means? That's what I'm asking. Now, there's this story that a friend told me about his friend who who went for sports in the morning, and he break I think he twisted his ankle, and it was a tremendous pain. It's like he fractured the ankle or something. Tremendous pain. And they went to a certain practitioner. He who practices healing, spiritual healing. And then the practitioner, and I mean, the leg was swollen and he couldn't even walk on the leg before they got to the practitioner. And the practitioner looked at him and went to his back and drew like a line or something on the guy's back, as if he was adjusting something in the guy's system or so. And instantly the pain disappeared and the leg came back into position. You see, but so this is what I want to answer, that And if you read the scriptures, we did discuss that, and I quoted to you so many scriptures, which seems to suggest that the cause of a lot of what we've come to discover scientific causes for, like epilepsy, leprosy, and so many other things that we've come to discover scientific cause for them. But back then in scripture days, most of them were attributed to evil spirits or to sin or to demons. So, and it's easy to quickly dismiss the 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 things that the ancients had to say about sickness and disease with the notion that they were primitive people who did not have understanding of modern science of what really causes diseases. So they had all these myths myths and primitive stories and ideas about what causes diseases. So we don't have any use for that again. But it is a mountain of evidence that prayer, that faith, that spiritual practice of different religions, and nearly every religion has those stories, and so on, do cure, cure or heal diseases which has no natural causes. So, how do you tell when it is that you should be consulting a doctor or when you have a spiritual cause? Is it are these problems of a spiritual cause or of a natural cause? This is what we're going to be answering. But first, I have a story I want to tell you. It's about Cain and Abel, who they are actually the first human beings to live on earth, the first human beings because Adam and Eve were actually created by God. So Cain and Abel were actually the first people to be born of a woman, to be born into the world, according to the story, to the narrative. And I've told you that the scripture is not there to tell you about things that happened in the past, like a historical record to inform you about things that happened in the past. The Bible is there and the stories are there to transmit wisdom in a lively form, in a way that is relevant, wisdom that is timeless, that applies to everyone, everywhere in history. Now, so Cain and Abel, to everyone, everywhere, in all times, Cain and Abel, Cain, Abel, their story really tells a lot about something that happens, and it probably happened to you, to you listening to me now, which is that there is Cain slaving and doing his best. We talked about sacrifices. Was it in this teaching we talked about sacrifices, or was it in Blueprints to Redemption? Either way, we talked about that to have a very meaningful life, to have a life that is successful, that means something, you got to offer sacrifices. This is very important, and for you to be able to offer sacrifices, you need a hierarchy of values, because you need to know when it is that you have to sacrifice one thing to achieve another. It's just like people always say that let's take for example students in school. If it is time to study, then it's time for you to sacrifice pleasure and all the other things that don't are not compatible with studying. And then if you don't offer that sacrifice, you would have all the fun there is to have, but time passes and there's no education. It's like scripture says in the book of Ecclesiastes that there's a time for everything. You see, to be wise, it's one of the key aspects of wisdom is to understand time. To understand that there is a time for everything and there's a time you're supposed to be doing something, and if you're not doing that thing at that time, then you're probably going to have problems in future. You did not offer the proper sacrifices at the right time. Let's take an example like young children. They, instead of studying in school, they are not studying and they are wasting their lives away to drugs and partying and all that, and their grades are all flushed down the toilets with their debaucherous lifestyle and all that. Now, so they are not offering the right sacrifices. They are not mindful of time. They don't have a wisdom of time, because if they have the wisdom of time, they will understand that this is a time to study, and they might never get that time again. It's the same thing that in Jewish culture, a young lady, a woman, it's considered to be matured at the age of accountability much earlier than a young male. A young male is up to 13 years old, but from 12-year old, a young lady is considered to have arrived the age of accountability. In other words, women generally need to come to terms with the wisdom of the passage of time far quicker than men. Men, the demand on women to become mature, matured quicker, is higher on women than on young males. And one of the reasons is this, that a young woman has only a certain number of time in her life if she's going to be to procreate and have kids, and if she's going to have a family and so on. But for a male, the time is almost limitless. And so if you're raising daughters and you're raising sons, you cannot raise both of them the same. You got to understand this major difference between them, that the way time works for both of them is not the same. Then you got to understand the value of time to each and every one of them, depending on their gender or their sexes. Okay, now imagine young ladies in school who believe that they have all the time in the world to move from one relationship to another, to another, to another. And why they say that they don't want to be bogged down by marriage and so on, uh, and they want to pursue their career. But of course, serial dating doesn't seem to stop them from pursuing whatever they want to pursue, and only for the time that they decide that they want to settle down and there's no viable man at the age of which they want to settle down, and then their clock is gone and they cannot have the time that they wish to have, and they cannot have the kids of their own and so on. So a wisdom of time. So where was I going with this? That sacrifices, Cain, it's one of the guys who is slaving and offering his best. And then Abel also, it's offering sacrifices. They both offering the sacrifices, but fate or God or reality seems to smile on Abel. Everybody likes him. He has friends. He kind of like everything he touches works. It's like he has that Midas touch where everything just works for the guy. But Cain, no matter what he does, I mean, he tries, he does everything, and it seems not to be enough. Cain is the kind of guy that it's like he has bad luck, like fate has frowned on him, and nothing he does seems to be worth the while. And it seems like some of us in life, right, that we look at people whom in our estimation are not as good as us, are not putting in a lot of effort as we are putting in, but yet everything is working just fine for them, and they don't seem to struggle to get the good things in life. And to us, it seems like fate or God or reality has frowned on us and has pinned the leg on the ground and said that no good thing is going to come to us. And Cain is that kind of guy. And of course, that begins to lead to resentment. And Cain is deeply and profoundly resentful, and at not just his brother, but at reality or at God. I'm using this word. I'm using the words reality, God, or fate synonymously in this context. So Cain begins to develop a deep resentment for reality, for fate, or for God, and a deep resentment at his brother, because he looks at Abel. Abel has everything that he wants to have, and not for lack of trying, and everything he tries seems to be totally ignored by fate or reality, and it doesn't produce the results. And it happens to us in life sometimes, that we look at people that in our estimation we are better than them. We have more skills, more intelligence, and maybe more moral credit to our account than them. And maybe we are working harder than them. Maybe we are a better human being than them. But everything seems to work for them and it's not working for us. And though we've tried our best. So what does Cain do? Cain decides to do what a lot of us do. I mean, it's a funny story, not funny like in a way that will make us laugh, but it's a story that it doesn't go the way we would like to tell our stories. Cain kills his brother Abel. I mean, what does that mean? What does that try to teach us? What is actually happening there is, as Cain to kill his brother Abel, it's like he thumps his feet at reality. It's like Abel is the ideal, is the standard of success, or is the ideal of what Abel or Cain wants. Think about this way. I want you to think about it this other way, that in life there are ideals, for whether they are real or just social constructs, the ideals of success, or what it is everyone else wants to have. And Kane says that, like they always says that the strong shame the weak. If everybody was weak, then good and fine. If everybody was failing, good and fine. If everybody fails, then there's really no failure. If everybody's weak, then if weak is normal. If everybody is poor, then poverty is okay. But if some are poor, some are rich, then poverty is not okay. If some are strong, so it's like the poet says that the weak shames the very presence of them being strong. It causes the weak to feel ashamed. The very presence of that I can see makes the blind feel left out. The very aspect that I am righteous, that I'm moral, that I'm upstanding, makes the sinners uh, feel guilty. It's like people always say that even those who are going to hell want company. They don't want to go to hell by themselves, and it will be much more devastating to see yourself going down to hell, and then all your friends and your buddies are going to heaven. So you want to drag them along with you to hell, you know. And so that is it. That the ideal it's Cain, because I mean the ideal is Abel, because Abel is successful. Abel is getting everything. I mean he's liked by heaven and liked by men, and he's prosperous, and everything he does, heaven seems to just smile and swallow it in. But Cain is doing his best. And maybe the story suggests that Cain's sacrifice could have been better, that he could offer a better sacrifice. Maybe his sacrifice is kind of like half-hearted. I mean, the story kind of hints that, but yeah, he's trying, he's putting in the effort. I mean, wouldn't fate at least look at that and reward him for that? Anyway, so Cain says that, well, I'm only bad now because my brother is better than me. It's like the strong decides to, it's like, I mean, the bad guys decide to corrupt the good guys, so everybody is corrupt, and then there'll be no good guys to make them feel bad about being bad. So Cain says, well, if I get away with the ideal, then whatever is left becomes the ideal. And this is what happens when we've allowed resentment to seep in, when we are angry at fate, when we are angry at reality, and we are angry at the ideals that God has set in this world. I cannot count the number of times I've sat across table with someone who is suffering from Cain's illness, and they would say something like this. For example, uh, they might say something like, oh, who cares about money? Money is not important, and so on. And that's because, and of course, they are broke. And that's because they've tried everything to earn some buck, to earn some money, and things are not so going well for them. And so they channel their resentment towards the ideal of acquiring money. Or the one that I always hear both from males and females, young males and young females, they say, "Oh, who needs marriage anyway? I can be all happy over myself. I'm independent." Or someone will say, and for someone who wants to be religious about it, it says, "I'm complete in Christ. I don't need anything or need anyone. I'm self-sufficient in Christ," and so on. And you see the resentment at the ideal principle, the ideals. And so if you look at your life, for example, and think like, which are the ideals in this world that you look at and you are resentful? Do you even know how to spot resentment in your life? Let me jump out of the box here and tell you something quickly before we continue. That be careful with yourself. You know, scripture says explicitly, apparently, because that statement is deeper and has deeper meaning. But on the surface, it simply says that the heart of man is deceitful above all things. Who can know it? That the heart of man is cunning, deceitful, and desperately wicked. Who can know it? You know, you could tell yourself that I know my heart, or God knows my heart. Yeah, true. And God just tells you how your heart is. It's deceitful, it's cunning, and it's wicked. When I say that be careful with yourself, is that I've mentioned several times that yourself has a tremendous capacity for self-deception, to lie to yourself, to rationalize, to make excuses, and to lie to you. You know, some I read something the other day that a meme or something, that if you want to be successful, do not lie to yourself. But it's not easy. It's not easy to know the truth even for yourself. To know when you're lying to yourself. To know when you're doing. You know, a friend of mine, I got into a quarrel with a friend of mine about 6 or 7 years ago, and when he found out what I did and what I had done was premeditated and calculated, and I pulled the trigger, knowing exactly what the consequences would be. So when he found out, I mean, he was flushed with anger and rage, and he said, if he meets me where I am, we are going to fight. He's going to give me a beating. And I told him, I understand the way you feel, but let's talk about this. He says, I don't want to talk with you about this. I'm angry. There's nothing you could say that will make things right. You always have a reason. Uh, Kind of like you always have. He made a statement like you always have a reason or for everything you do or something. But he didn't say it like in a positive way. And I understood, because I know people like that, people who always have a justification or reason for every act that they've committed. And I don't like those people, because for everything they've done, they have an explanation, they have a justification. But I knew that I was not like those people, because I hated them, and I took deliberate actions not to be like that. What exactly do I mean? There are people who act impulsively, and after they have acted, if the consequences go well, if it goes well, they take credit. If it doesn't go well, they stand and they look back in hindsight and they create post ex facto explanations to rationalize. I mean, the explanation is coming after the fact, after the act, not before. It's not like they sat and they thought about what they wanted to do, and they thought about the consequences, they thought about what might happen right or left, and then they acted. No, they just acted impulsively. Then after, now they try to give these explanations to rationalize or to justify why they acted that way. Uh, but I wasn't like that. Yes, it's true. I always have an explanation or a reason for everything I do. For a very long time of my life, that's been my practice, because I rarely act impulsively. I always calculate, think about what I'm going to do, why I'm going to do it, think about the consequences, and I act. And if somebody asks me, why do you behave like that? Or why the hell would you do something like that? And I will tell them the reasons I thought about before I acted, not after. Before, what I was thinking, what I was hoping to achieve from that action. And so yes, I always had a reason, but my reasons were always those I thought about before I acted. So finally, myself and this friend, we got a chance to sit and we talk, and I explained my reasons, that I was aware you're going to be angry, and this is why I did what I did, and this is what I thought was going to be the results for me. And we had a drink over it, and we laughed over it, and it was over after he heard the reasons. Okay, now I was going to say that be careful with yourself, because you could say, for example, that Mama was talking about that it's sometimes hard for us to know the truth for ourselves, because sometimes we are the kind of people that we act, or we discover a feeling we have, For example, I might say that I hate I hate chocolate, or let me put for example, somebody might say I hate sales. For instance, there's a young woman that contacted me some years ago. She asked me for money, and then coincidentally, a friend of mine was needing someone desperately to work with her in the shop, and so just within that day, this lady calls me asking for money. She said she wanted to buy what, and she needed some money to add to buy the stuff. And I said, I can do you better. I can get you a job. You will be earning like twice or more that amount you're asking me monthly, since you don't have a job now. You lost your job, like you told me. And she said, oh yeah, I really like that. And then she asked me what kind of job it is. I said sales. She said that no, she cannot do that. That she would rather do prostitution than sales. I mean, that's how much she hated sales, the stuff of sales. She said anything else but not that, and that she would even do prostitution than do sales. And then I asked, why do you hate sales? It turns out that she doesn't even really know why she hates it, but of course, she, like most of us, we discover that we hate certain things, we like certain things, we want certain things, don't want certain things. Then we come out with post X factor explanations to just to retroactively impose them upon those feelings, those emotions, those proclivities, and those value preferences, instead of really investigating, going to the roots to find out, but why do I hate this? Where's the origin of this value, of this preference, of this feeling, and so on. So the murder of the ideal is usually what happens when we are thumping our fist at fate, at reality. We'd say when we feel like reality is unfair, when we feel like uh, fate or God is unfair, we thumb our fist. The next thing that often results is the murder of the ideal. And either we murder that ideal in ourselves, or we murder that ideal in others. And how does this apply in everyday life when I say of the murder of the ideal? Okay. Now, have you ever heard about those people that they call themselves? There are people who have become expert they are at morality shaming. They laughed at others who are trying to do the right thing. You know, let me take this one step a little bit. That there's something I've experienced over the years. I've been doing this teaching stuff for so many years. There's some of you in listening to this teaching, I think, that will probably be younger than the number of years that I've been teaching the wisdom of God actively. Okay. Now, what I was going to say is that one thing I've noticed that when a student allows ill feelings or feelings of resentment to seep into them about me, usually the immediate response, how they respond to that feeling of resentment, is that they try to attack the if they are not brazen enough. We have had very few that were brazen enough to attack me personally. But if they are not brazen enough to like attack me out of respect that they have for me as their teacher or someone that has brought value to their lives, what they do is that they try to murder, attack viciously every ideal that I've and wisdom that I've passed on to them. Now, some of them, they try to like attack me, like contradict me to my face. And I don't mind people contradicting me. I don't mind my students having different opinions and trying to challenge some of the things I say based on what they think is the truth and the reality. Yeah, we could always have those difficult conversations, and you tell me why you disagree, and we could have those conversations. I'm very okay with that. As a matter of fact, I enjoy it sometimes. I enjoy it all the time, all the time. But this is the difference when a student is resentful and something has happened that makes them resentful towards me. I'm going to give you one particular case in point. This student of mine, and this happened, I think, about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, something. And and it's happened, and this case it really stands out for me. It happens both. It's not a case uniquely with female. Females can be emotional sometimes, but this particular case, and it's happened with both males and females, and that the whole issue of trying to murder the ideal when we think someone, an authority or a power that is stronger than us, has been unfair to us and has not treated us as we deserve, is something that is common to every human, regardless of their gender. And so this young lady, she had pledged at the time that she was going to be supporting my work. I think that was 5,000 francs a month, and that wasn't much. It was something she was well capable of doing, because at the time there were people that were supporting my work with 100,000 a month, 50,000 a month, and so 5,000 was the least she could do, and she was well capable of doing it. And so what happened was that she called me and she said that at one point she called me and she said she misappropriated money for her business. I think she said that what happened was that she lost money for her business, and then something like that. And so to her, that was her message telling me that she would not be able to make up our partnership. But I didn't understand that, because that is not how I play. I like to think of myself that I'm running an Olympic level team, meaning that a team of very excellent, reliable people that will do their job and will not look for the next excuse to wiggle out of their job or of their responsibility. And this is the reason for that, why I think so. That is when uh, uh, this is it. This is why I train nearly every person that has had the opportunity to work with me, that I don't easily take the next excuse you give me uh, with smiles, that because you had a good reason not to do what you were supposed to do, then it makes everything okay. No, reality doesn't work that way. And I think that one of the best gifts I can give my students is to help them understand, at least viscerally, that reality at every step will give us every excuse not to do what we are supposed to do. And if we learn to take those excuses, will never amount to anything great. I can give you an example upon examples, and I've always said, let me give you one example. When I was determined to learn computer, I told my dad to get me a computer, and he said no. Okay. I could have said, well, there goes my opportunity to learn computer because my dad isn't going to get one for me, so how else can I learn? First, I needed to start with the basics. I needed to understand software. I needed to understand how to type and all those things. What I did was I took a carton paper. I went to the house and to our computer in the house, and I drew out the keyboard on the carton and really drew out the keyboard. And then I took my younger sister's textbooks on Microsoft and Excel, Microsoft Word, Office, Microsoft Excel, and the whole Microsoft operating system. And then I went to school. I was in the dormitory. I studied all those books. Then I began to practice typing on that cartoon, how to type on that cartoon. In other words, I didn't let the excuse stop me. And I could go stories upon stories upon stories of how there were excuses and excuses upon me, mountains of excuses for me to look at and say, well, I have every good reason not to give up. I have every good reason to quit. I have every good reason not to do what is expected of me. But I've often found out that by sitting and finding one way, instead of accepting the 99 excuses why I should not do what I'm supposed to do, I should find the one excuse with which I can do what I'm supposed to do and act on that excuse. And I have found that that has not only built a resilient character in me, It's not only helped me become a force of nature in the face of circumstances and challenges, it also built me into a very rigorous human being. Okay, now, so to my greatest dismay, I've often found out that most people I meet quit over very little excuses. I mean, a lot of people that I meet quit over little excuses, sloppy excuses, and truly the excuses make sense. I always thought to myself that one person sat at home and said that I couldn't make it to the meeting because it was rainy. Why the other person said, and then I asked, why couldn't you get an umbrella? Well, the umbrella wouldn't have helped. The rain was heavy, would have wet my shoes, and what was the point? I just decided to stay. And the other person came with an umbrella. Meanwhile, there was someone else that came with an umbrella. And meanwhile, there was someone else that didn't have an umbrella. They took their dresses and they put in a plastic bag and they came and they changed their clothes. Never excuses. And that's how I've always lived my life. And I learned this lesson from scripture. And that is why I've always thought that one of the things I can pass to my students is by modeling this example for them and by holding them to keep their word even when the circumstances are difficult. I hold them to keep their words, to do what they're supposed to do. And one of the ways I thought that if you can learn financial accountability, then you would be accountable. If you can learn to pay your debt, you see, yeah, I said something in the. We're still coming back to the story. I know I've jumped out of the bus here and I've just stayed hours out of the bus. We're going to get back into the bus. Now, I said something in, I think it was Blueprints to Redemption, that stick to what is natural, or stick to the natural, stick to the normal. I think it's about time I talk some more on that. What exactly? Let me really add some bone to that, some flesh to that bone. When I say stick to the natural or stick to the normal, that seems, it might seem like I'm telling you to become normal and average human beings because, from the look of things, people who've achieved great things, people who've done things, are people who refuse the status quo, who push the boundaries and did extraordinary things, people who refuse to accept things the way they are and did the abnormal. And I mean, from the development of the electricity, I mean everything, business boundaries and spiritual boundaries and so on. These were people who refused to accept the normal. But yet I tell you that stick to what is normal, stick to the natural. You know, that seems like a very bad advice for people who really aspiring to be big and to be great. But let me put some, add some bones, some flesh to that bone, and maybe issue some caveats. The thing is that, my friends, this is how I'm going to make the statement now, that when I say stick to the normal or stick to the natural, I'm saying that do what everyone else is doing, what has been proven to work, unless you have a very good reason not to do it. You see, when I say do what everyone else is doing or do what has been proven to work, and when I say do what has been proven to work, by proven over time, you should be cautious of all these new trendy fads, these new trendy modern things. You want to look at the things that have worked for the longest number of years, for the highest number of people, the things that have worked consistently, the things that have brought happiness and fulfillment to the highest number of people in the longest numbers of years. For example, the grand studies, the longest longitudinal, longest study done in the history of the world, has actually found out that one of the highest factors that contributes to our happiness and longevity in life is relationships. That the better relationships and closer relationships we have with people around us, that leads to better health and happiness. Now, these are things that have been known to work. Now, you can decide to be a hermit and isolate yourself from everyone else. That's not something that has been proven to work. It's not normal. I'm not saying it might not work for you. I'm not saying you might not need that, but it's not normal. You see. So when I say stick to what is normal, to what is natural, it's stick to what works. Stick to what works for the most amount of people, that has been proven to work for the highest number of people for the longest number of time, unless you have a very good reason not to. if you have a very good reason not to, if you don't have a very good reason not to do what everyone else is doing, don't try to stick your head out of the sun. And by stick your head out of the sun, I mean be bold. That is why I talked about permanent principles and principles that change. And we're going to come back to that. Permanent principles like the world, one of the things that is constant in the world is change. Every day things are changing, but there are some things that never change. Like I've mentioned, that the human nature has not changed and has never changed. And most of the things that are spiritual about the a human being has never changed. Those are permanent about us, permanent truths and realities about us. So my point is that you got to know the things that never change. And as much as you adapt to the things that change, you want to make sure that you don't mess up with the things that never change, the things that are known to create happiness for human beings, and the things that are known to create misery and disappointment has not changed. So if you want to modify reality, if you want to modify the world, and this is what happens when people become resentful at the ideal, either because they lack of trying, or they tried and they didn't have what they expected, and they feel that faith or reality is unfair. You know how many areas which you can look at it and think that fate or reality is unfair, or even the better one, you could think that you know better than reality, you know better than fate, that you know better than God and what God has suggested as the ideal. Not suggest, God doesn't suggest, what God has prescribed as the ideal, or prescribed as the ideal. You think that it is unfair, it is cruel, and you have a better idea of what should work. So you go out to murder the idea. And I was going to say, continue the story about usually what happens when my students have picked up a resentment. So this young woman, she felt like I was insensitive to her plight when when I didn't give in to her not fulfilling her commitments. And to her, I was just supposed to let it go. I was just supposed to understand. I might was even supposed to give her money instead, since she's lost money and other stuff. And I understand from her point of view how it looks like. And so with the resentment, she things began to escalate. And first, she decided to cut off herself from. At the time, I think I had a mailing list. I had some other channels which I was releasing most of my wisdom. She decided to cut off herself. I noticed that she was cut off. She wasn't participating anymore. And then so and then apparently she also had other issues going on in her life at the time. And then I got to her and noticed that she had not been participating. What did she say? Either way, long story short, that her own way of taking out her anger at me was to cut off from my teachings and so on. And I thought it didn't make sense in a way. At the time, I didn't understand what it was. And then later on, when she met with me and she had taken a step that was I mean she had taken a direction in life that was opposite to everything I taught her. And so and I mean she set out to do the very opposite of all the values that I had shared with her, and she was proud to share it with me and tell me why she thinks I was wrong about those values and why she will no longer be pursuing those values and so on. So in other words, I've experienced time and time again that the temptation when we feel like fate is unjust. As a teacher, I understand that when my students feel like I have not treated them well, I have not been considerate, I have not been maybe loving enough to them, the very first thing they attack is my teachings or the values that I stand for and represent. Or the very first thing they want to completely cut off themselves from is my teachings. Like, I don't want to hear the next thing he has to say. And it's the same thing with God, that when we are angry with God, and when I talked about relationships in the previous episode. I said that marriage is a very powerful relationship and the only relationship in the world that is more powerful than marriage is our relationship with God. And I said that powerful things has great potential for good as well as great potential for destruction. An aircraft, do you know how long it used to take to cross the Atlantic uh, when there were no aircraft? I mean, it's a matter of months. But now it's a matter of hours. You can cross with the this wonderful thing called an aircraft. But how many times have you had an aircraft crashed, an airliner crashed? How many people did you hear survive? Most cases, everyone dies. I mean, it's a catastrophic thing. So things that has great potential for good is like a car, that a powerful car, powerful horse. And so our relationship with God is tremendously powerful. And when that relationship has issues, and it's very easy to have issues with God. I know there are some of you who just love God. I mean, no, maybe this is another rabbit trail I want to pursue here, but fine, let's leave that alone for now. My point is that when our relationship with God has issues, sometimes we take it out at God. And how do we take it out at God? His word. We attack his ideals. It's something I have seen it and seen it and seen it. Like I said, I enjoy, God even enjoys it too. He says, come to me, let's discuss, let's reason this thing together. Bring your case. It is Jacob. Present your case, speak your point of view, and let's talk about it. And God does this with Job, he does this with Moses, he does this with Yeshua and so many other people. He does it with you if you want, and he does it with me. And I've had most of these very interesting times with God when I come with my fist clenched, and I think that I have a better idea, or maybe God is being unfair, and we begin to talk about it, and then I realized how foolish I was, how I was not seeing the big picture, and all that. Yeah, well, so I understand the temptation to want to attack, destroy God's word and destroy God's ideals and God's values when our relationship with God has a problem. How is it that we end up having problems with God? Maybe I've met people like that. Maybe a loved one was terribly sick and they prayed and did everything for God to heal them, and God did not show up, it seems. And so they are angry with God. And how do they take it out? At God's word, at everything God says, at all the proscriptions and prescriptions that God gives for reality. So I said I enjoy that. God enjoys that. He enjoys the debates. He enjoys the talk. I know if somebody comes to you with ideas that are not debatable, then you can safely discard those ideas and pay no attention to them. God enjoys debates. All the prophets, they engaged debates. All the apostles, the disciples, even Jesus did that because he does that. So, but usually when students who have resentment want to attack my teaching, they come from a completely irrational angle. They are not coming because they have another idea that is better, or they have another point of view that is better. Somehow they just feel bad about what I'm saying. Somehow they just don't want it. It's usually the arguments they bring. It's usually more emotional than rational. And I understand that some things I say might be emotionally rattling, and that might elicit some emotional response instead of a rational one. That I understand, that I can tell the difference. So, as a teacher, I completely understand the temptation to destroy the ideal. I've seen that with my students time and time again, and I've seen how it happens with human beings when they are angry at God. They come out with ideas that diminishes or completely discards everything God says is valuable, everything that God says we should value and esteem in the world. So this is what happens with Cain. What would have Cain? What Cain? What would have been the alternative for Cain if he felt like everything he's doing is all his efforts? It's accounting to nothing. You could look at scripture, you'll find other stories of people who were in a Cain like situation. You could find the mother of Samuel, the prophet Samuel, was it Hannah, and she was barren, and then found herself in that very ugly situation, being mocked and ridiculed. And what happened? You could read in the book of First Samuel. And she prayed her heart out, and then got hurt. You see. Then now you look at the next case, which was the case of this the guy known as Jabez. I think you could find his story in First Chronicles chapter 4. Yeah, it should be there. And Jabez, of no wrong of his is done, only because his mother gave birth to him in pains. So the mother named him Jabez. And so, if you read there in First Chronicles chapter 4, it tells that Jabez was more honorable than all his brothers. Means he was the good guy. He does everything right. But yet his life was full of a lot of sufferings and pain and so on. And why? For nothing he's done except how he was born. I mean, a innocent kid, what did he have to do with all the pains that his mother endured when he was giving birth to him? And so Jabez could have acted like Cain, and this is unfair, and he would have waged the war at reality. He would have waged the war at every ideal that is set forth in the world, like an ideal that maybe hard work, maybe virtue, it's all necessary. And he says, well, virtue is not necessary. Look at everyone else is not as virtuous as I am, but they are successful. So what is the point of virtue? What is the point of work? What is the point of this? I mean, all that. Look at your life and think of some ideals that maybe God prescribes for your life, and you're angry at them, and you have, or you think you don't think as high of them as God thinks. And that, why is that? So Jabez, what did Jabez do? He didn't wage a war at reality. He didn't try to murder the ideal. What he did was he prayed. And you could read Jabez's prayer there. And he prayed and God answered and his life was transformed. So what am I saying here? That if things are not going well, if you're putting in your best, what seems as your best, check. The first thing is that check the effort you put in it. Like Cain, it's possible that Cain's sacrifices could have been better. He could have offered better sacrifices. It seems like maybe he was offering half-hearted sacrifices, like he was playing a game at reality. Like, let me put it this way. uh, you know you cannot think, you remember in this series I have emphasized that I have emphasized on finances, and I've emphasized it in the context that how you make money is serving God's other children. And then I've emphasized on marriage, relationships, marriage, the relationships with parents. I should have also talked about that, but that is implied. And relationship with children, in relationship with friends, I talked about friends, and I talked about the highest form of relationship we could have in this world with another human being, which is marriage. Now, now, if you think that, say, making money is not important, or if you think that marriage is not important, or you think it's one of those things that I might have or don't have, doesn't matter. If I have it, fine. If I don't have it, okay, who cares? Anyway, now, if you think that low of it, so why are you surprised when it ends up having problems? You know, sometimes I look at the way young adults get married today, and it amazes me. It amazes me two things. I think about it that this either means one or two things. Either these people are deeply suicidal and do not care about their own lives, or they completely don't value marriage at all and they think so low of marriage. I mean, you don't meet someone on social media and you guys barely know each other, and in a month's time you guys are married, and I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, so either one is deeply suicidal or do not care about marriage at all. Because if we value it as half as God would want, as half as God esteems it, then it's something we will treat with almost utmost care and utmost reverence. You know that there are people that if their money was in trouble, I mean, if they were going to lose so much money or be in the financial balanga, they would pray so hard for their money than they would pray if they had a marital problem, or if their marriage were going down the toilet. Like, well, what is it? So let's just divorce him and or divorce her and get on with life. So what's the problem putting on? I mean, there are people who put in more effort to study some field, to study some knowledge which they can make money out of it, because at least a lot of people don't have issues when it comes to money. And there are a lot of people who put so much effort into that aspect of their life, but when it comes to marriage, they just throw into it half-heartedly and don't care about studying what it takes to make it work. We discussed that in the previous episode. So that speaks about value. So when I one of the things that I hope to have achieved in these teachings is that you will have the proper value system. And I remember having a conversation with someone some years ago, and he was criticizing violently a certain preacher in Cameroon that has 5 kids, and it's a young man that he should be about 35 years old at most now, maybe less. He has 5 kids, and so he was criticizing this man of God that how could he? It's primitive that the most someone nowadays should have is 1 or 2 kids, and he himself has just one or two at most. If worse come to the worst, I mean, he was even hurling expletives at this preacher for being so foolish and so backward and primitive to have those number of kids. And then he begins to talk about that, children distract from pursuing one's purpose. If you want to be great in this world, have you noticed that most great people don't have many children? If you want to achieve something, if you want to make a mark, if you want to create impact. So I asked that, great in what sense, and who gets to determine that, and so on, and make a name? Who says that is the ultimate purpose of being, of living? And so we began to talk, and since he's a preacher, we had to speak that language. And I said, tell me, for example, what would making impact look like for you? And of course, we understood he's going about preaching and doing miracles and healing. I asked him, so for you, making impact, you got to be preaching, you heal people's homes, you heal their children, heal their marriages, and fix their lives and so on, and so that they can live a good life. He said, yeah, that's the goal. And I said, so you're saying that the purpose for your life is to the purpose for your being is to go out there and make sure that everyone else has everything else that you say is not valuable, like making money is not valuable, having a family is not valuable to you because it will impede you from being great. But your job to be great is to go out there and make everyone else have a good time at having all these things that you say are not necessary. It's like someone that says that you want to be, say, a high powered entrepreneur or someone out there, public figure, an influential public figure, and all your time out there, you're doing work that permits people to have luxuries for their families, to have cool times with their kids. And in other words, everything you're doing is giving everybody else the thing that you don't want, the thing that you are sacrificing, and is making everybody else has that thing. And that's why they are paying you, because you are providing value in that sense in their lives. So at the end, what do you have? At the end, you've helped everybody else get this stuff, and at the end you have nothing, because every one of us, whatever amount of money we have, and we're going to leave it behind. We're not going to take any away, and we're going to leave it for people who might end up squandering it. Just today, I was reading somewhere online about the one of the richest persons in Cameroon who died some time ago. His family are having a serious fight over inheritance, and maybe they're all going to squander that money away, whatever money the old man left behind. Is that what you want your life to be? That you would acquire all this money and you leave them behind to people who might do something wonderful with it or squander it? I mean, life got to mean more. And it's easy to distract ourselves, to fill that void in us by the pursuit, by purpose pursuit of money. But when we've had a lot of money and then we realize that it doesn't give us everything we thought it was going to give us, and then we need something else to fill ourselves with. I think I should talk about motivators, what motivates us in life. And I said that Do what everybody else does. Do what has been proven to work, unless you have a very good reason not to, unless you are inspired. And no, all of us, we like to think we are special. We like to think we are inspired. We like to think we are the next hot shot in town. But I always think that it is better, much more better, to underestimate yourself, and then it turns out that you're higher than what you thought or what you posed yourself to be. I mean, Yeshua gave an advice about this, that when you go to a party, do not seek for the higher seat. It says for someone else that is truly greater than you might come, and you would be removed from that seat, and then you'll be put to shame, and you'll be sent to a lower seat. This is when you go to a party. I mean, Yeshua was very practical and wise. That when you go to a party, you look for the lower seat, and let it be that they come and look for you and say, truly, you deserve to be at a higher place. So it's better that we put ourselves in life at the lower place, and then however it says that whoever humbles himself shall be lifted up, or whatever people or anything else says, no, you truly are higher than this, and they lift you up to a higher place. It's not what I'm saying. It's often better to underestimate yourself than to overestimate yourself. I have met a lot of young people who think so high about themselves, who think they are something, and that is a big problem for them, because they don't, when the opportunities that truly reflect who they really are comes to them, they pass them over because they think they deserve more, and then the things they think they deserve passes them by, don't come, and then so they are angry with fate, they are angry at reality for not giving them what they deserve. But fate and reality has really actually given them what they deserve, so it's better. So I'm saying that a lot of us like to think we are inspired with an idea, a rule breaking idea, a boundary pushing idea. You want to be sure that you're truly inspired, or you'll be safe to just do what everyone else does, whatever has been proven to work. Avoid the new fads or the new brave modern ideas about what is going to make men happy or what makes women happy. And who wants to live in the world of Dale Carnegie, of rules of how to make friends and influence people? I've said that if your purpose is to love your spouse or to love your friends and treat them right, I mean, if that is truly what you want in your heart, then you look for a book like Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and you read and try because you want to treat your friends better, then it's good. But if you're, and like it's often the case that there are people who like to manipulate others and like to take control of others, they pick a book like that and they learn all the rules, they learn all the ropes, and they learn to say the right thing. But their goal is not to love anyone, to treat anyone well, but it's just to use the role to play a game with reality. And so I was going to say something at a point that if things are not working, if you find yourself in a Cain like situation, there are two things you should look at. Number one, look at your sacrifices. Maybe you need to offer better sacrifices. Maybe you need to offer time sensitive sacrifices. Maybe you're offering a great sacrifice, but you're not offering it at the time. Maybe you offered sacrifices at the wrong time in your life, and you have to adjust the order of your life, adjust the hierarchy of values of your life. Secondly, if you've looked at your sacrifices, you pray like Jabez, like Anna. Instead of taking your feast at reality, you pray. You pray until you have your answer. You pray as if the answer depends on it. And your destiny will change. Your star will change if you do these things. You know, uh, and then also, people will do amazing things. People will push boundaries in business, and I'm not talking about pushing spiritual boundaries like trying to change the permanent things. I'm talking about people who break the rules and do amazing things. You usually call them entrepreneurs. In the simplest, shortest definition of entrepreneurs, an entrepreneur for our purpose of this discussion I can give you, it's someone that is willing to take risks. That's what an entrepreneur is. And you got to be really motivated to actually be successful as an entrepreneur, to take risks. And I was talking with a friend who started a business which is now quite successful, and he told me that for the first 6 months it was so tough. He felt like giving up several times. That there were times that an entire month will go, he will not have one sale, one customer come to his shop. So I visited him at his shop, and every minute or so people were coming to buy and so on, and it was quite moving, and he was quite excited. And he said that the day he comes to the shop and he sells well, he's very refreshed and he goes back home very energetic. But the day he comes and the business is closed, he goes back home so tired. I say, I understand. And so he said that what made the difference is that he understood that he had to persevere, he had to stay on it, and that there were times that it was rough and he felt like closing the shop, like it would never work, but he kept on, and things changed at a certain point. And it takes a real entrepreneur to do that. And so in life, there are at least five different motivations or motivators in life. And the highest things, and the studies, this is something that studies have proven, that the highest motivation that a human being can have in life is from what is called a purpose motivation or a vision motivation. Once you have a purpose, a clear vision, and a purpose for your life, what is the purpose of life? What are the things that are important to have in life? Says who, by the way, according to whom? According to modern culture of pinheads, intellectuals that think they figured out what is important for everyone else, also on, or celebrities and socialites that are projecting a fictitious standard of reality to the world. Is that what it is? So purpose motivation is the highest, like when you have a purpose, a vision for life, and things you want to do in your life. And I think this is something that deserves an entire lecture on its own, you know. And then the second motivation, the second highest kind of motivation is like the motivation of an entrepreneur, the motivation to achieve something, to take risks, to you're driven, you know. And another third source of motivation, which is a very low source of motivation, is for fame and recognition, and fame, recognition, popularity. That also gives motivation, but to a very low extent. And then the lowest, one of the lowest level of motivation is money driven motivation. You know these people who are driven by money, uh, because they're driven by money. You could see them from a mile coming. And I've told you that don't be the kind of person that makes friendships with people just to use them as bridges to go to where you want. Be the kind of person that is genuinely interested in people, that genuinely values your friends, values the people in your life because of their values, their spiritual qualities. Because everyone can spot a money hungry person from 100 miles away. Anybody can spot an obsequious, fame seeking, and popularity seeking person from a mile away. You can sit in a room of 100 people. You can pick the money hungry guy out, and you can pick the fame uh, and seeking guy out. And these guys, nobody trusts them. Nobody trusts them. People who come across them have this temptation to use them just as much as they are trying to use them just as much as the person is trying to use them. So, and if you're driven by a vision, if you're driven by purpose, the thing is, money always comes towards that, for that purpose, for that vision, because money now becomes a tool, not the goal, you know. And that is it. That you want to make more money so you have time to spend with your loved ones and you can build better relationships with your loved ones, or you want to sacrifice your loved ones so you have more money, so you feel good about having more money, or whichever case it is. And a lot of us are playing different games in life. uh, there are many different games that we are playing in life. I mentioned something about free will, that free will is not automatic or necessarily intrinsic, and that free will, the quantity of free will. Let me try to describe free will for, give a metaphor which will help us to understand free will. It's like a game. The other day I was trying to teach my nephew, she's about 6 years old, how to play chess. We have a chess board in the house, so she came, she was so excited, and she says, "Oh, uh, Uncle Divine, would you teach me how to play? Let's play." So I put the board, and the first thing is I have to teach her the rules of the game. I took quite a good amount of time trying to explain how the various pieces on the board move, the various chess pieces move, and so on, and the rules, just the rules of the game. And I said, by the time I finished, I mean, I explained one after the other multiple times. Have you understood? She said, yes, I've understood. Move to the next, move to the next. And I will even tell her to demonstrate, and she demonstrated. When I finished doing that, and I said, okay, now, can you explain to me the rules of the game? Let me know you've understood the rules, because you cannot play the game if you've not understood the rules. And so she couldn't even explain to me how one piece moves. She completely mixed it up or mixed up the whole thing and forgotten. And I said, so we cannot play there. I gave her the paper and said, read the rules and try to master the rules. Once you understand the rules, then I'll come, we'll play. And so this is free will. Free will is like the game, and once you have a game, you're restrained to the board, and you're restrained to certain rules. The game restrains you to certain rules. But once you've understood the rules, within the rules, there are almost limitless numbers of possibility. Even though we think that a rule is something that constricts, that restrains, that limits, but truly, a rule creates a context within which we can have limitless possibility and life-giving limitless possibility, you know. And so in a chessboard there are rules, and these rules is even what makes the game meaningful and possible. If you take away the rules, then there's no game, there's no meaning, everything is nihilistic. And so free will is like that. They are the rules embedded in nature, they are the spiritual and the physical rules of life. And these rules gives us the limit. We don't have limitless free will. That is quite self-evident that we don't have limitless free will. Our free will is constricted in all kinds of ways, is limited in all kinds of ways. For example, you cannot use your free will now and choose to fly or choose to become a robot, a how do they call a cyborg or something. There are limits to your free will. You cannot it's all kinds of limits now. But what determines the free will, the limits that you have to your free will? Scripture, I mentioned that last time in John chapter 1 verse 12. It says that to them that believe, he gave them the power to become children of God. John 1:12. And I said the word there for power is the Greek word exousia, which actually means the right or the power of choice. Now, the limits to which we have to the power to choose, the choices that are available, depends on the game we are playing. The rules depends on the game we are playing. And we live in this world, we play different kinds of games. We play so many different games. Some people are playing a purpose-driven game, a vision-driven game, and some of them are driven by a vision from God. Some of them are driven by a vision from human beings who wanna be God in the world, and so they have imposed their own vision of reality, their version of hierarchy of values, and which those who are naive and blind and enslaved enough follow these other human beings, follow these pharaohs. You want to know that you're free. The only way you can be truly free is to follow God's vision, God's blueprint for life. If you think you have a mind of your own, you should take my advice. I've told you, be very careful with yourself. If you think that you can ignore God's value, then ignore the values of all the philosophers and all the pharaohs and all this, the human gods that have existed, and forge your own value. Then you should truly, the level of deception that has taken over you, the level of chains that has held you captive is so great. You should be careful with yourself. So I was saying that the free will, the power of the free will we have, first of all, depends on how we are using it. Like I said, that if you keep saying yes when you're supposed to say no, a time will come when you're supposed to truly say no. And when maybe saying no, your life depends on saying no, you will not be able to say no because you've trained yourself to say yes and you've lost the capacity to say no, and you've been destroyed in that kind of way. And so, yeah, it is that this is one of a vision that God gave me some years ago that truly explained this. It's like it could be called parallel universes, and that though we are each in this world, each of us are living in a universe of our own, and this universe has its own laws and its own rules. And that is why there are many things that uh, uh, people could be in the same car. No, let me not use that example. That's not a good example. But let's just go a little bit further here. Depending on the game that you are playing in life, there are rules, and the rules are particular to your game. And depending on the rules, it depends on the power of choice you have in that game. And so they are from the lowest levels to the higher levels. Each game has low levels and higher levels, and there are different kinds of games. It's like rooms. This is the vision that God gave me some years ago, that it was like a room. Once you're inside a particular room, there are rules on how to play in that rooms, and there are set of opportunities in that room. And sometimes the opportunities, sometimes something you want is not an option that is available in that room or in that game you're playing. So there's a door, someone has to grant you the key to open, and once you open the door, you enter another room with more possibilities, and of course with different rules. So when I say stick to what is natural, stick to what is normal, is that you understand the level you are at, you understand the game you're playing, and you understand the rules of that game. That is the only way you'll be able to play. But if you're truly inspired, if you're truly inspired, that means you've been granted the key into another room. And in that other room, you will find a different set of rules, which of course, compared to the room you're from, it might not make sense. The new room, the rules of that room might not make any sense, but within the context of reality in the room you've come into, they make sense, and they have a structure, and they have a coherence to them. And so that is how God universe exists. God's universe is, it says, in my father's house there are many mansions, there are many sets of reality, many rooms with different rules of reality. And that is why you could look at someone who is sick, and like myself, someone who prays for people often and they get healed. I could look at them from my world, from the reality, from the universe which I'm functioning in. I know that I can speak a word and that person be healed. I know that I can, and the person be healed. But from another person's reality, the only way that person is going to be healed is if they take a drug or something. I was going to say, I know when I also say stick to the normal, stick to what is natural. What I'm also saying is that do not go for the wedding without buying wine, because you think when you go there, God is going to turn water into wine. Buy the wine if you have money. But if you do not have the means to buy the wine, and the vision, the game that you're playing in life, God's vision of your life shows that you're supposed to be in that room at that time, to go to that wedding. Don't let the absence of wine stop you from going. Go, and you might have a miracle. That is why I said we are in the world of Olam Hasiyah, the world of actions. Once you have a vision, let this vision, and once the vision is true, and more importantly, if it is a vision of heaven, let this vision superimpose itself on your environment. Let me give you an example. I give you a very good example. You know that marriage is costly economically. It's costly. Someone said that how it is that marriage, which was from the 1960s with the rise of the feminine movement, has been considered something of the male patriarchy, the patriarchy. which is meant to dominate and take advantage of women. Because the truth is that marriage, for the most part, based on the way reality is, seems to be more, uh, should I say, that does more good for women when it works than for men. Men can almost get nearly everything they want and still live a fairly decent life outside a marriage than with women. And a woman's life is more likely to be destroyed in a marriage than a man's life. A man can make a mistake and make a poor choice in marriage and still somehow get by with it and get out of it. But a woman, that could be fatal. So with all this talk and that marriage is something of the patriarchy, and women get rid of all those old ideas that are meant to enslave women and make women slave to men. Okay, now, so and then also there was the idea that marriage is for poor people and desperate people. But someone said, very brilliant intellectual said, that how it is that marriage has become a luxury today. It seems like mostly rich people get married. It seems like people tell themselves that, look, I'm going to make some money, and then when I make some money, I get married. I have someone told me just a month ago that he's not going to get married until he has 50 million francs in his account and has built his house and has a car. 50 million francs in his account, he's not getting married. In this value system, money comes first. Now, this is my point. My point is that if you're following God's vision for life now, uh, and you've seen God's values, God's hierarchy, God's values and hierarchy of values, and you're pursuing this hierarchy of values. And for instance, I look at my son Chesed today and how far he's come, and he's not really lacked anything necessary that is needed since he was born. And Hashem has been great and has provided for him. If I were looking at my accounts, my bank account at the time before we had him, if I were looking at my financial condition, I wouldn't have, I'd have said, well, until I have so and so amount of money before that. But I understood that the bringing of another human being in the world in partnership with Hashem, to create a life, from a seed, to create a whole life out of nothing, just from a seed, and then to nurture that life with spiritual values. It's one of the greatest things you could ever achieve in this world. I know I say that, and you think that any Tom, Dick, and Harry procreates every day, and children are born every day, and so on. So, what is the point? And that is a problem with that thinking that if I begin now, we're not going to get into it completely. So, let's just keep that and go ahead. This is the point that I knew that what a privilege it is to partner with the creator of the universe to create a new life, and that each child comes with a blessing. And I wish I had a whole new teaching episode to explain what this means. And so I stepped out with faith, pursuing the vision, pursuing the creator's value, pursuing the creator's hierarchy, and then miracles happen along the way. Amazing miracles. So if the vision of the creator says, you shows that you're supposed to be at a wedding but you don't have wine, don't let it stop you. Act it out, act out your vision, and the miracles will happen. That is what I mean to stick to the normal. And these are the caveats that are around that. Okay, and let's push this a little bit further, and let's summarize this, and yeah, we are 1 hour 30 minutes as I intended to for this teaching to be. I talked about demons and diseases. You know, the greatest enemy of Jerusalem has been Athens. Of Hebrew philosophy have been Greek philosophy, and they were not supposed to be enemies. They were not supposed to be enemies. These two points of view, of views of reality, were supposed to be good friends, the best friends ever. It's like one is scientific, a materialistic view, which is Greek, is the view that says only things that can be touched, felt, and measured are real. And so it's the materialistic scientific view of reality, why Jerusalem or the Hebrew or the Bible is the spiritual view of reality. Now, the Hebrew word, the biblical word for Greek or Greece is Yavan, and if you add a letter to that word, which is you add the letter Zadi, it gives you the word changes to the Hebrew word for Greek or Greece or Iona, which was the capital of Greece, changes to Zion. And if you read in Isaiah chapter 2 from verse 2 to 3, it says that the word of the Lord, the instructions of God will go out from Zion. It changes to Zion. Now, every letter in Hebrew has a meaning and has a meaning of its own. And the letter Zadi is a letter for a saintly person, a righteous person. And so, if you add that letter to Greek, to the word that spells Greek or Greece, it turns to Zion. And so, which means that if you add spirituality to the material worldview, it gives you a complete picture. It means you got to learn to blend both together to have the full vision of God for reality, because these are the two visions that often come. There are those who say only the spiritual is necessary and important, so they are overly spiritual. I mean, too much salt, like I always say, think salt is so important that they put too much salt. And then there are those who think that only the material is important, no need for the spiritual. It's bacteria, and there can be no other reason. And the guy says a witch or a demon, and there can be no other reason. And so each of them are apart. And this one says it's only prayer, this one says only drug, this one says only faith, this one says only science. So there's that divide. And, and so, but the way to live any meaningful life is to blend these two, to bring both of them together. I talked about sodium chloride in the previous lecture, and I spoke about the 92 natural occurring elements of the periodic table. Did you know that God used 92 Hebrew words to create the world? From Genesis chapter 1, from verses 1 to I think it's chapter 13, all those creation narrative has 92 Hebrew words, which represents the 92 natural occurring elements of the periodic table. Now, by putting those words together, mixing those words produces substances, just like compounds. Matter is produced by a combination of different elements of the periodic table. I told you, for example, that sodium on its own is not good. Chloride on its own is not good for us. But if you mix these two together, just the right amount of each, you have something salt, something that is so good for our table that brings life. And so, if you take the material worldview just in its right quantity, and the spiritual worldview just in its right quantity, and you blend them together, you will have God's true vision for reality. And this blending, you see, I've been teaching you uh, so many episodes of teaching, and this is part of the chemistry we are doing, the chemistry of reality, of seeing the world clearly, not being one-sided or polarized on too much spirituality, or being polarized on too much materialism. So, like I mentioned in the teaching, I said that it is possible that the biologist is right, that it is a bacteria, and it is also possible that the African student is right, that it could be witchcraft activity or spirit. How is it that both of them can be right? It is very possible how both of them can be right. I'll give you an example. There was a time I had this happened about I think it was 2014. I had a terrible health issue. I think it was malaria, high fever. It first of all started that this fever happened in the night. It usually starts at a particular time in the night. Night fever they call. at a particular time in the night, and by morning I'm fine. Towards evening at that particular time in the night it starts. And then it changed after a while and became a full-blown illness throughout the day. Then in the night I realized that I'm having dreams, and every time I'm having a dream the fever is rising, and in the dream I'll find myself fighting something, and the fever is rising each time I'm struggling. Now long story short, I saw a picture of a monkey hanging on the wall in my room, and a vision, and I realized in the vision that the monkey was controlling my brain and putting those dreams in my brain, and those dreams were making me sick as the more I was dreaming them. And so when I slept, I decided that each time the dream would start, I'll wake myself up not to dream. And the more I fought those dreams, the fever began to subside, and I got well. Now, a few weeks later, I was walking around and I saw my friend, and I saw a monkey on his head. I mean, through my spiritual vision, I saw a monkey wrapped up upon his head. And I asked him, "Are you feeling okay?" He said, "He's fine." I said, "Are you sure? Are you feeling okay? No headache, no fever, nothing?" He said, "He's fine." And just that day in the evening, he fell sick, malaria. And because from my experience, I had understood what that monkey could represent. In the evening, he fell sick, malaria. And he told me that, "Look, I'm not feeling well, And I said, "I know what it is. It's an evil spirit." And I prayed with him, and he was well almost instantly. Now, now, but I bet you if he went to the hospital like I did in my case, I went to the hospital, they did a test, they saw it was malaria, and it was truly malaria. Malaria. I was taking drugs, and the drugs were not subsiding, were not helping as much as I thought they would. My point is this: that have you ever had someone so sick and they go to the hospital and the hospital cannot discover the cause? Sometimes there are illnesses that the main cause is spiritual, which means that there's a spiritual problem at the root, that until that problem is solved, your physical means, tools might not be able to fully solve that problem. And I can give you obscene examples about this. And there are some that the main cause is physical, that and these things are very important, which I don't think we can get into fully here. But I just wanted to tell you that taking one side of the view that the biologist is right, why the African is wrong, or the Bible is wrong, why science is right, or science is wrong, why the Bible is right, is not the view to take. It's not one or the other, it's both. And it's not always easy to find that perfect chemistry between sodium and chloride, just as it's not easy to find the perfect chemistry between the natural and the spiritual. And that is what wisdom is for. And that is what you have me for, to teach you, to train you, to be able to do this. So I hope that in this series, I have been able to let you know the God's value systems, that there are things that you should fight. Let me say it like how my friend says it sometimes. You should fight like hell for them. And there are things that are not worth much the effort. And one of the things you should fight like hell for, fight for your relationships, your friendships, your marriage. And this is very valuable, very, very valuable. Is the only relationship that is as your marriage is the only relationship that is as powerful as your relationship with God. It has a great potential to make your life so great, and it has a great potential to ruin your life. It's important. Don't talk about it as though it's something, well, okay. Well, don't talk about it like something trivial. Talk about it with the weight it deserves. And then the same thing, money. How you're going to make money? It's all entangled in the web of relationships. And then wisdom. You got to acquire wisdom. You got to learn to know the difference between good and evil. Oh, earlier this year, I don't know if I told you the story. I was sick, and probably it was COVID, because there was a point in which I lost my sense of taste completely. And my wife cooked food, and it was meat, and everything was just tasteless. I didn't realize at the time I'd lost my sense of taste. And I asked, what's wrong? Is it that you're not putting Maggie? I thought that maybe it was the way she cooked the food. And she said, this food is very tasty, very, very tasty. And I really cooked it that way because of you. And I said, I wasn't getting any taste at all. It was just bland completely. And there are times when we don't have spiritual taste, when we don't know good from bad, right from wrong. Imagine not having physical taste, not able to taste anything. N- I mean, imagine how awful it is not to have spiritual taste, not to know good from evil, right from wrong, and not to know the things that are truly more valuable from those that are not. It's an awful place to be, and that is why you got to learn the reality of good and evil and learn to tell the difference. And I'm going to conclude on this final note that if you ever sit in your life and you have a string of problems, like string of problems that look like bad luck. Let's take for example, uh, what could it be? You 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 go to the job and say you lose your job, or God forbid, no, God forbid you lose your job, or they cut your salary the same month. Maybe you have a kid fall sick and you got to spend a lot for the kid's treatment. The same month, maybe your plumbing gets bad and you got to spend a lot to pay. And then maybe in the course, your car develops a serious problem and you got to pay. And you have all the strings of misfortune happening to you. That is a tell sign that whatever is going on is calling your attention that there's a spiritual problem that you have to resolve. And spiritual problems usually, when I say a spiritual problem, I don't want you to be all mystical about it. A spiritual problem could simply mean that you are breaking some rules of the game that you are playing, and and you just have to understand and adjust yourself. That's it, right? That you're breaking the rule and you're hurting yourself, and that's why you have me to teach you this wisdom, to tell you the rules of the game, the games of life. And we not all of us are playing the same game. Some of us are playing a very higher game. Like myself, I'm playing a very high game, and and so the rules that I might likely play by are different. And I'm not saying that I've heard the same argument given by people who claim that immorality and evil is not evil for them because they are playing a higher game and they are at a higher esoteric level of spirituality. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. That's an unchanging principle. Evil is evil, good is good. It doesn't matter the level of the game you're playing. That's not what I mean by the rules change depending on the level of the game you're playing. So my friends, I think this is as far we can go, and so much I would love to say, but whatever is left to be said, whatever needs to be said, we're going to look at them in 2021. All right. I hope we'll still be together. So I want you to get back to me with your feedback. I'd love to really hear. And if you have ideas about what direction we should take this to in the next year, in the coming year, I really love to hear them. Okay. And so thank you so much all for being there. And I want to give you a blessing for not just this week, this week, which will obviously correlate to the end of 2020, but for this year we're getting into. And believe this blessing, okay? It's no joke, it's a real blessing, and it's going to make a difference in your life. I bless you in the name of Yeshua. I bless you in the name of our Abba in heaven. May His light shine on your way this year, 2021, and may this year be better than every other year you've ever experienced in your life. That as you adjust your mind, as you adjust your worldview, as you adjust your posture in life to take a posture that is reflective of Abba's values, of Abba's wisdom, of Abba's ideals, may the favor of heaven fall upon you, and may heaven shine his face on you, and may heaven open doors for you. May heaven bring you new opportunities, and may heaven turn around all Cain-like situations in your life into Abel, and as heaven had into Abel, as not as he was killed, but as he was favored by heaven. And may heaven hear your prayer, may heaven hear your groans and your pain like it heard that of Anna, and may heaven answer us with a blessing that will be so conspicuous that everyone will know that heaven has heard you and favored you. And may heaven hear your pain like Jabez, and may heaven answer and enlarge your territory. I bless you. I bless you with the happiness of life, of family, of friendships, of relationships, of financial success and financial productivity. I bless you with the happiness and the fulfillment of having a productive work. I bless you in the name of our Father. I bless you in the name of Yeshua. Amen. Shalom. Bye for now, my friends. See you in 2021. And those of you who will be so kind to get back to me with feedback. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.